What is up, guys, and welcome back to another Grimlock video. Today we are going to do an ultimate guide for Devastation Evoker. I know you guys love seeing me play this class, so here it is. This is going to go over all of our talents, our builds, our gearing, PvP talents, pretty much everything you need to know to get into PvP as a Devastation Evoker in the patch 10.2.6 and the patch 10.2.7. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. If you do, please make sure to leave a like, drop a sub, and also feel free to go support my Twitch channel down in the description below. I stream about 3 to 4 times a week, and it helps me out a lot. So please make sure to go check me out there. And if you have any other questions, please make sure to leave them in a comment down below. I respond to each and every one of you guys within 24 hours. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day, and let's get right into it. Alright everybody, so to kick things off, we are going to be going over the Evoker side of the tree in the talents, and you'll notice from the previous ultimate guide I have changed around some of these talents. Now they are a little versatile, and depending on what comp you're playing you can swap them around quite a bit, but yeah, let's just go over each one and explain what they do. So basically we have Landslide. This is just automatically granted to us for being a Devastation Evoker, as well as Natural Convergence, which is basically just to disintegrate channels faster. Landslide is a root, which we also will pick up Forger of the Mountains to make our root a 1-minute cooldown, and it also is very hard to break because 200% more damage is pretty crazy. Not gonna lie, it's really good. We obviously take Obsidian Scales. This is one of our only defensives, and it reduces the amount of damage we take, so that's super important for us. We do take Expunge. Now, you won't be using this that often, but you can use it versus classes like Assassination Rogue, which is really important, but it's pretty rare you use it in general. The main reason we take Expunge is to get Verdant Embrace, which Verdant Embrace is actually very important, and I can show you some tips with that later. Permeating Chill, this just makes it so that every single blue spell we cast, which falls under Azure Strike, Disintegrate, Shattering Star, and Eternity Surge all slow our target by 50% for 3 seconds. And now Disintegrate, as it ticks, actually reapplies Permeating Chill, which is really nice. Like I said, Forger of the Mountains. Obsidian Bulwark just gives Obsidian Scales a second charge, also super important. It's pretty rare we take 1 charge of Obsidian Scale instead of 2 charge. I do take Scarlet Adaptation. Now this makes it so that every single time you heal, you store up to 20% of your heal, basically up to about 50k in PvP, so that the next Living Flame consumes it and does increased damage based on the amount of healing you've absorbed, I guess you could say. So it makes your Living Flames hit really hard after healing, which is really nice. We do take Quell. Now Quell is our kick. It is a ranged kick, and the best way to describe Quell is it actually operates pretty much the same exact way as Counter Shot from Marksmanship Hunter, or just Hunter in general, I guess, outside of maybe Survival, sorry. Yep. So yeah, Quell. It's a 25-yard range, 20-second cooldown. It locks people out for 4 seconds, which is pretty nice, but it is a physical kick. So now this is important because when you're fighting something like a Paladin and they press Blessing of Protection on themselves, you will not be able to quell them to stop their cast because this is not a spell. It is a physical ability. The nice part about Quell is that you can use Quell through some things that block spell abilities, but it is a little gimmicky here and there. Most of the time it's not better to have a physical damaging ability, I guess you could say, but sometimes it is, so there's that. We do take Cauterizing Flame. This is super important for certain specializations like Feral Druids. It's good for Shamans because it removes curses and you can remove Hex with it. Really good versus Warlock because it can remove Agony. It's also really good versus Assassination Rogues because this removes Deathmark. Yeah, it just removes a bunch of stuff. So it's super important to make sure you get value out of this. I also use this versus Arms Warriors because it removes Thunderous Roar, which is super strong. And it leads to Sleepwalk, which is our only crowd control really outside of Deep Breath Stun. So it's pretty much a must pick. You basically have to take Cauterizing Flame just because it's the only way to get to Sleepwalk. We take Tip the Scales. Now, Tip the Scales is an important ability. It is super important you take this. Now, Tip the Scales basically empowers your next Empower spell to instantly cast at its maximum Empower level. Now, that doesn't sound crazy on paper, and you may be like, why is this a 2-minute cooldown? But it is actually very strong because it allows you to instantly cast your Fire Breath or your Eternity Surge, which will rarely happen in PvP, but you can instantly cast that at the maximum power level, and I'll show you why that's also super strong later on in the video. Instinctive Arcana, this just basically makes our damage increased by 4%, just all of our damage, which is really nice. Ancient Flame makes it so that Living Flame has a reduced cast time after casting Emerald Blossom or your Verdant Embrace, which is also really nice because 40% pretty much counteracts Engulfing Blaze on the Devastation side of the tree. So you kind of want to pick up Ancient Flame. Sometimes you don't need it. It depends on what comp you're fighting against. Another kind of not to mention talent that's really good is Enkindled, because this just makes your Living Flame raw hit an extra 3% more, which is pretty huge. Let's see here. Regenerative Magic. I take this. Now, some people might not take Regenerative Magic, and they might go Attune to the Dream. It all depends on how you're feeling, I guess, on the day. I take Regenerative Magic because I just like having 5% leech, and it tends to be my top 2 heals over the course of a game. Actually, let's take a peek here and see. I'm going to switch my screen here, and we'll go to, say, this is a really long game. This game lasted 7 minutes, and it was my second top heal at 18% of my healing done just from leech. So I feel like that's pretty good value out of a talent. So yeah, Regenerative Magic is pretty good. Inherent Resistance, also insanely good. 8% reduced magic damage taken. Now, if you think about it, think of the classes that don't do magic damage. It's pretty rare you come across them. I think some of the only ones that do pure physical damage nowadays are Feral Druid, Marksmanship Hunter, maybe Assassination Rogue technically, but even them, they have like Envenom. Not that it does a lot of damage. Arms Warrior, Fury Warrior. So a couple of classes, but not anywhere close to the amount of magical damage classes. And if you're fighting something like, say, Kitty Cleave, where it's an Arms Warrior and a Feral Druid, you can also swap off of Inherent Resistance and just go Enkindled. But most of the time, you're just going to be playing Inherent Resistance. We also go Draconic Legacy, which is a 8% stamina increase, making us have a bunch of stamina, a bunch of health. Super important to take Draconic Legacy. I take Extended Flight, just because it leads into Panacea, and because I don't take Attune to the Dream, it is my only way to get there. Unless I take off Regenerative Magic and Extended Flight, I can go Bountiful Bloom. But realistically, this isn't the ideal pathing you'd want to take. In my opinion, I think taking Extended Flight and Regenerative Magic just makes more sense. And now we get Panacea. We also take Blast Furnace, which makes our Fire Breath last a little bit longer. It's not super important, but it does lead to our important talents, so you do have to take Blast Furnace. I guess you could technically take Source of Magic too, so it's up to you really there. But yeah, like I said, we take Panacea. We do take Renewing Blaze. Renewing Blaze is our other defensive ability. Now this you have to use preemptively, but when you take damage while Renewing Blaze is active, 100% of what is done to you is healed back to you over 8 seconds. Now it takes a while for this to heal you, but say you take 1,000,000 damage over the course of 8 seconds, 1,000,000 damage will be healed back to you over the course of 8 seconds, which means you'll be getting around 125 health per second, which is pretty nice for a defensive if you can time it right. It's kind of like Mage's Alter Time, but worse, in my opinion. It's a little more, it's like a lot easier to use than Alter Time in my opinion, but yeah, you use it the same way. You use it at high health and hope to get a lot of value out of it at the end. We do take Rescue. This is super important, probably one of the best defensives we have. It's only a minute cooldown, and because we take Twin Guardian, it gives us a massive health absorb, which gives it to you and your ally, which is really good for helping your team. Oppressing Roar. Now, Oppressing Roar is pretty important in PvP. You can use it before your Deep Breaths, which allows it to last 4.5 seconds instead of 3 seconds, and this allows you to get off some extra spells during your burst rotation, which is really nice, really crucial, and we'll go over that while we're going over our burst rotation later in this video. We take Leaping Flames. Leaping Flames makes it so that when your Fire Breath is cast at specific empowerment levels, your Living Flame strikes additional targets. Now, this includes healing as well. So say you use Tip the Scales Fire Breath, your next Living Flame will hit, I think, 4 to 5 targets depending on if you have Font of Magic or not, which is really nice because that procs a lot of the time your Ruby Essence Burst, which allows you to disintegrate for free, and the disintegrate deals extra damage. We do take Aerial Mastery, which gives us another hover charge, and I also take Fire Within, which reduces the cooldown of Renewing Blaze. And all the way at the bottom here, we take Terror of the Skies, which makes our Deep Breath a stun. Now, it is important that you do not take this when you are playing with a sub rogue or pretty much any rogue. They will hate you because they rely on their stuns being off DR in order to set up for kills. So I highly suggest you do not take Terror of the Skies when playing with a rogue, though I guess it does depend on the rogue player. Sometimes if they're like an outlaw rogue, maybe Deep Breath isn't that bad because they have very limited stun windows. But, you know, at the end of the day, a stun DR is a stun DR. It's not bad with a lot of comps. It's really important you take this, though, if you're playing with a Death Knight, which is like 90% of the time if you're playing the most basic comp you can play for Devastation Evoker. And then Time Spiral. This basically allows it so that you and your allies gain an extra use of your mobility ability. For us, it gives us hover. For some classes, it gives roll, like Monk. For rogues, I think it gives you an extra sprint. So there's really nice things that you can actually give your teammates. I think it gives Death's Advance for your Death Knight. I'm not sure what other abilities it gives for other classes. I know it gives Blink for Mage. So some nice utility here for your team to allow them to kite even further or get to their target even faster. It also allows you to kite even further because hover is our lifeblood. But that is basically the main part of our Evoker talents. If you guys have any questions about this, like I said, please feel free to write in the comments below. Maybe some things that you might want to swap out. If you don't like running Leech, for instance, you can also try Walloping Blow. Like I said, you can try Enkindled, which is also really good. And I also really enjoyed playing Tailwind. And the way I got to Tailwind was I took off Scarlet Adaptation, Ancient Flame, went Enkindled and Tailwind. And I really enjoyed having the 70% movement speed. At first, this is super good in Battlegrounds, in my opinion. But in any form of arena gameplay, it loses a little bit of its luster. It's pretty good, though, versus like classes like Warriors. It prevents them from catching up to you really easily, especially because you have Permeating Chill. And like I said, we're going to be spamming a lot of Disintegrates. So there is ways you can build around this, but this is mainly how I build my build nowadays. And like I said, that is the Evoker side of the tree. We will be moving over to the Devastation of the side of the tree. Alrighty, so moving over to the Devastation Evoker talents. Obviously, you pick up Pyre. You need to pick up Pyre, Ruby Essence Burst, and Azure Essence Burst. This just makes it so that our Living Flame and our Azure Strike has a chance to give us Essence Burst, which makes our Pyre and our Disintegrate not cost Essence. And also down later in the tree, it makes it so that it does more damage, which is super nice. We do take up Dense Energy. Now, sadly, we have to take this, but I wish we didn't because it's actually useless for us as PvPers. Pyre is... I never press Pyre in PvP, ever. So this is basically a wasted talent point, and I really wish there was just a bridge somehow to Power Nexus, because Power Nexus is really important, especially because it leads into Engulfing Blaze. But yeah, so this is basically a useless talent point, Dense Energy. It's really good in PvE, but in PvP it does nothing. I take Imposing Presence. Now this makes it so that Quell is a 20-second cooldown and not a 40-second cooldown. And some people take Inner Radiance. Inner Radiance is not bad versus certain compositions. It also depends on what you're playing with, because it depends on if you'll be being trained or if your teammate's going to be being trained a lot. But if you're being trained a lot, Inner Radiance definitely has some counter activity to dampen. And dampening in general. So 30% more effective Living Flames is pretty huge, especially if you pair it with Attune to the Dream. And Enkindled, you can be healing yourself for like 200Ks with Living Flames, which is really nice. I will say, if you're playing against like TSG, which is like Warrior, Death Knight, Healer, you might not need to take Imposing Presence, because just a well-timed kick on the healer could be worth it. And most of the time TSG will be training you, so you can take Inner Radiance and get value out of it. But this is like up to you. This is also a really good choice note in my opinion. We take Eternity Surge. This is our hardest hitting ability for Devastation Evoker outside of Tip the Scale Fire Breath, but I'm pretty sure Eternity Surge hits harder, which is really nice. Like I said, we take Power Nexus. This just makes us have 6 Essence instead of 5. Dragon Rage, this is our burst ability, and the way Dragon Rage works is for 18 seconds, every single ability you press, whether it's Living Flame or Azure Strike, gives you Essence Burst, and you gain the benefit of your Mastery regardless of the target's health. Now to explain what our Mastery does, basically when somebody is low in health, we do not that much damage, but when somebody is high in health, we do a lot of damage. So say I have 50% mastery, when someone's at 100% health, I will be dealing 50% more damage to them. But if they're at 20% health, I might only do like 12 to 20% more damage. So it's pretty important that Dragon Rage gives us maximum benefit no matter what they're at. So we'll be doing 50%. If I have 50% mastery, we'll be doing 50% more damage at all times with Dragon Rage up, which is absolutely disgusting. Super strong in my opinion. Arcane Intensity, Disintegrate deals 16% more damage. This is super huge considering Disintegrate is by far our highest damaging ability. I know a lot of people complain about that, but there's not much we can do about it. It's just how our class is made. And if they did remove it from Disintegrate, I promise you they'd put it into some other ability, so you can't complain that much, because first season we had a bunch of damage in our Deep Breath and everybody was complaining about that. So they shifted it from Deep Breath into Disintegrate. Rant is over. Either way, it's just how our class works. Check out Season 1 Frostmage. I mean, literally their Ice Lance was way more percentage-wise of their damage than Disintegrate, but I'm done. Done talking about it. All of you guys complaining on Twitter, I don't want to hear about it anymore, okay? All right? Engulfing Blaze, Living Flame deals 25% increased damage and healing, but its cast time is increased by 0.3 seconds. Now, the great part about Engulfing Blaze is because we go Burnout down here, a lot of the times we'll get instant cast Living Flames, so that negates the negative side of Engulfing Blaze altogether. So this is a great talent, super strong in my opinion. Ruby Embers is absolutely awful, and it's not played in any form of aspect of the game. So I don't know why this is a choice node, because Ruby Embers is terrible. Horrible. Even if you stack it up to 3 times, you're doing 15k damage over 12 seconds. It is horrible. 15k over 12 seconds, that's like 1.2k a second. That is terrible. I've never seen a worse ability in my entire life, and that's if you stack it up. It is so bad. It can literally hit for like 500 damage. Definitely take Engulfing Blaze. It is the only option here. Ruby Embers is absolutely like terrible in every way. Animosity. This just makes it so that when we cast our Eternity Surge and our Fire Breath during Dragon Rage gets extended by 4 seconds. And this is really important because you can actually end up making your Dragon Rage last an extra, almost like 30 seconds total. Like instead of 18 seconds, it can almost last 30 seconds, which is absolutely insane. Really strong, depending on how you use your Empower spells. Now, most of the time, it will just buff it by like 8 seconds, but having a burst that's on 26 seconds long, that's 26 seconds long and only a 2-minute cooldown is absolutely insane. So Animosity is a must pick. We do go Essence Attunement. Now this allows our Essence Burst to stack 2 times so that we can stack up not 1 but 2 Disintegrates back to back that are buffed by Essence Burst. So super strong there. Heat Wave. This just makes our Fire Breath deal 40% more damage. This is pretty much a must pick. I don't think anybody would want their Fire Breath hitting for 40% less damage than it does right now, so you pretty much have to take Heat Wave, at least in every single form that I see. I don't take Honed Aggression. I don't think this is necessary. Eternity Span, this just makes it so that our Shattering Star and our Eternity Surge cleave. So say there is 2 targets next to each other, you use Eternity Surge or you use Shattering Star into an Eternity Surge, it should hit both of them, and they should both take a lot of area of effect damage. Now I do take Eye of Infinity. This just increases the damage that Eternity Surge deals to my primary target. Now Event Horizon isn't horrible, but Eye of Infinity is significantly better in my opinion. I personally take Catalyze, which makes it so that when you're dealing damage with your Disintegrate on a Fire Breath target, it ticks faster. Now because of Catalyze, you get more burnout procs because your Fire Breaths are ticking faster. Or you get the same amount of burnout procs, but you get them faster either way. So I like that. And also, it basically makes your Fire Breath just do more damage in a smaller window, which is really nice. Now, if you didn't want to take Catalyze, you can take Lay Waste. Now, Lay Waste is also pretty good because we go the 1-minute Fire Breath or Deep Breath talent here, which makes our Deep Breath deal an extra 20% damage. But depending on what comp you're running, sometimes Deep Breath isn't that important for doing damage and is more used for getting yourself out of crowd control / dealing the stun. But most of the time, Lay Waste is not a bad option either, and it's just free damage. Tyranny, now this is also super, super important because this is actually what gives your Dragon Rage the maximum benefit of your mastery regardless of the target's health effect, and that's basically what makes Dragon Rage good. So you have to take Tyranny. It also makes it so that your Deep Breath gains the benefit of it, so it does the same amount of damage no matter what the target's health is at, which is really nice because Deep Breath can hit pretty freaking hard. Shattering Star, super important. Shattering Star just makes you do 20% more damage for 4 seconds. And if you take Arcane Vigor, it also grants Essence Burst. Now, you can take Focusing Iris depending on what you're playing, and that makes it last 6 seconds instead of 4 seconds, allowing you to get off like 1 or 2 more casts of Disintegrate during it, which is pretty nice, and it helps out a lot. Burnout. Now, this just makes it so that your Fire Breath damage has a 16% chance to cause your Living Flame to be instant cast, and it can stack up to 2 times. Now, this does include the dot damage from Fire Breath, and I have tested this, and unironically, it's a little weird, but for some reason, it procs the same amount of Burnout procs, whether you hit 1 target with Fire Breath, 2 targets with Fire Breath, or 6 targets with Fire Breath. It does not matter. As long as the dot is ticking, you will get the same amount of procs. So it doesn't matter if you hit a huge group of people with your Fire Breath, or if you only hit 1 person with your Fire Breath, you will still only get a 16% chance to gain a instant cast Living Flame. So it's kind of just RNG, but it is very nice to get these instant cast Living Flames, especially when you can do Shattering Star and do Eternity Surge, Disintegrate, and then you get an instant cast Living Flame, and you can end your Disintegrate with like a 150k damage hit. It's pretty nice. It's pretty solid. Like I said, we take Onyx Legacy. This just makes our Deep Breath a 1-minute cooldown. Now, you can swap this out depending on what comp you're playing, in my opinion. I used to not play this like at all, but I started playing this and as Arcane Vigor as well. But I used to not play either of these and used to just go Power Swell and Iridescence. It's all kind of depending on what you prefer, but I prefer to go Onyx Legacy nowadays. I will say Spellweaver's Dominance is super important. 30% more damage on our crit strikes instead of the usual 200%. Now in PvP, this is nerfed like everything. So instead of doing, I think, 200% damage, I believe a crit does like 160% damage. But with this, it deals something like 185% more damage. I'm not 100% sure, but I do know it does impact your damage in PvP. Super important. It also is our branch to Hoarded Power and Scintillation. Now, Scintillation is super, super broken. We'll go over that in a second. I do take Font of Magic. Now, this is a 50-50. Sometimes I take Font of Magic, sometimes I don't. It pairs insanely well with Scurrying Flame because Fire Breath basically purges your target based on their empowerment level, and because Font of Magic allows your empower spells to charge to an extra level, you get an extra dispel on your Fire Breaths, which is really nice, and it also makes them charge faster, which I'm used to from playing Augmentation back in Season 2. So my Eternity, I feel like if I don't have it, my Eternity Surge takes forever to cast. It's just like a muscle memory thing. But either way, you can take off the point from Font of Magic and also go Lay Waste if you want to keep Catalyze. If you don't want to keep Catalyze, you can take it off of Lay Waste and go Power Swell and take Catalyze and go Lay Waste instead. You can kind of play around with it a little bit. But most of the time, this is my build. This is how I run it. It depends on what comp I'm fighting too. If I'm not fighting anything that has a purgeable bonus to me, I will take Lay Waste no matter what. So it's something to think about. Titanic Wrath. Now this is super strong. This just makes it so that when our Disintegrate is buffed by Essence Burst, it deals 15% more damage. Now, just because of all the modifiers in this tree and the amount of damage Disintegrate naturally does, if you combo it with, say, a Shattering Star and you get the proc from the Arcane Vigor, this just makes your Disintegrate hit a stupid amount harder than it usually would, pretty much all the time, which is really nice. And then we have Hoarded Power. This just makes it so that Essence Burst has a 20% chance to not be consumed, just making it so that you can spam Disintegrate that much harder and slam your keyboard a little bit more. Casualty. This makes it so that your Empower spells decrease in cooldown as your Disintegrate deals damage. Now, this includes the ticks from your Disintegrate, so if you want to get back your Eternity Surge or your Fire Breath even faster, you can just spam out your Disintegrates, and most of the time you'll get them back within 20 seconds, which falls under the same window as Shattering Star. So that's very nice, and that's why I take Casualty pretty much 24/7. And then Scintillation, last but not least, is an absolutely insane talent. Disintegrate has a 15% chance per each time it deals damage to launch a level 1 Eternity Surge at 50% power. Now, I will explain why a level 1 Eternity Surge does not matter, because 90% of the time in PvP, especially in arenas, you are only going to be empowering your Eternity Surge to level 1, because anything past level 1 just makes your Eternity Surge cleave harder, it hits more targets, but in PvP it doesn't matter, especially because you're focusing on one target at a time most of the time, and so Scintillation, channeling it out at a level 1 Eternity Surge, not that important. And also our Eternity Surge cleaves anyways from Eternity Span, which does benefit Scintillation anyways. So if, say, I get a proc on my Disintegrate, and my Disintegrate's hitting 150k, and then I get an Eternity Surge proc, the same exact global as a Disintegrate tick, and that Eternity Surge proc hits for 150k, now you are doing 300k in a single instance of damage, all because you're channeling Disintegrate. It's absolutely insanely strong, and it also allows you to get Eternity Surge cast procs through walls, because you can hover behind a wall while channeling Disintegrate, and you can get Eternity Surge procs to proc off as you are behind a wall, which is absolutely disgusting. It should not be logical, but it is what it is. But yeah, I don't think anything on this side of the tree is even close to being worth mentioning. But Power Swell and Iridescence is worth mentioning in my opinion. And like I said, the way I would get there is I would probably take off Onyx Legacy and my Arcane Vigor and go a 2-minute Deep Breath build, but end up with Iridescence. Now, Iridescence makes it so that when you cast an Eternity Surge, your next 2 blue damaging spells deal 20% more damage. And like I said, this just stacks with modifiers to make your Disintegrate hit even harder. So you would stack up your Essence Burst, you would Shattering Star, Eternity Surge, and then you would just spam 2 Disintegrates out, and those Disintegrates would hit super hard, ridiculously hard. Also, if you cast your Fire Breath and you get an instant cast Living Flame, your next 2 Living Flames after casting a Fire Breath are going to do 20% more damage, as we don't cast Pyre, and Living Flame is the only other red spell we have. So that's what Iridescence buffs, is Living Flame and Disintegrate for us. So just to get an idea of what that build would look like and what it would do, but that is basically our Devastation side of the tree. Alrighty, and now we are going to look at the PvP talents for Devastation Evoker. There is actually quite a few good ones in my opinion. I will say I take Obsidian Metal quite a lot. You don't have to though, depending on what compositions you're fighting. Say you're fighting a Demo Lock and a Shadow Priest, they're not going to have a lot of interrupts for you to absorb through Obsidian Scales, so you won't need to take Obsidian Metal. But there is some compositions where it is just a must pick. For instance, like Demon Hunter, Warrior, Resto Shaman, or something like that. You're going to be kicked a lot if you don't have Obsidian Metal, but it is entirely up to you, and it's something to think about. Now, looking at our talents, we have Chrono Loop. Now, Chrono Loop is incredibly strong, but is incredibly hard to use, and it is dispellable, but when the target gets dispelled with Chrono Loop on, it does activate its effect. Now, this is a super weird instance of that happening, but what you can do with Chrono Loop is, say you are attacking a mage, and a mage gets down to 20% health. Say he alters at 80% health, and then you get him down to 20% health, you then Chrono Loop him, and he alters back up to 80% health. The Chrono Loop will then bring him back down to 20% health, which is really, really, really strong if you can time it properly, but you have to time it properly, and I will say that. Now, it's really good to counteract against certain classes. Like, in my opinion, it's really good versus, like, Priests, because you can use it on a life swap and keep somebody at really low health. So say you get them to 30% health, you Chrono Loop them, they get life swapped, and then Chrono Loop brings them back down to 30% health, and now you have 2 targets at 30% health. Really disgusting work, all from a 45-second cooldown and just a PvP talent. It's super fun to mess with. I highly suggest practicing it before using it in an actual rated arena, because it does take quite a bit of practice, and you can actually end up ruining your damage if you use it. Say you accidentally use it on somebody at 80% health, and then you do, 40% of their health and damage. Chrono Loop will actually heal them in that case. So you have to be very careful about using Chrono Loop. It's super strong in my opinion. Scurrying Flame, another very, very strong PvP talent. Ridiculously overpowered versus Resto Druids. It's also really good in my opinion versus Restoration Shamans, as it gets rid of Earth Shield and Riptide and basically everything else that Shamans love having on their target. So yeah, Scurrying Flame, all it does is make your Fire Breath purge somebody based on the amount of and Power Charge. So if you tip the scales Fire Breath and you have Font of Magic, it is going to instantly purge off 5 magic buffs from all the targets hit with Fire Breath, which will basically clear a target of all Druid hots, which is pretty disgusting. I'm not going to lie. It's pretty nasty. You can also purge off things like Blessing of Protection from a Paladin. You can purge off things like Alter Time. You can purge off Ice Barrier. Just the list goes on. Oh, you can purge off Power Infusion. You can purge off, I believe you can purge off, no, just Power Infusion. Sorry, I was going to say Icy Veins, but you can't. Icy Veins is no longer purgeable, right? I don't know. Somebody fact check me on that. But either way, yeah, Fire Breath purging, absolutely insane. Scurrying Flames, like, super strong into a multitude of classes. Time Stop, also really strong, really hard to use. But if you can time it well, it is pretty insane. 45-second cooldown, basically an ice block, but you can't do anything. You can't even be healed in Time Stop, and it can eat your teammates' cooldowns, which is the scary part about it. But the best way to use Time Stop, in my opinion, from what I've found, is whenever your healer gets caught in a full crowd control, like a full polymorph or a full trap, you just Time Stop yourself, and you now are immune to damage for almost the entire duration they are in the crowd control they're in, which is really, really good. The only counteraction that people can do to this is, say you're fighting against like Rogue Mage, the Rogue can gouge you and then cheap shot your healer, and then while the healer is cheap shot, they get polyed, and then they kidney you full, and you don't have time to time stop because you are sitting in a gouge. So you have to use it preemptively, which is also very hard to do, but you can do some pretty crazy things with time stop. For instance, if your healer gets caught in a scattering shot, and you know a hunter, or an intimidation stun, for instance, and you know a hunter is going to go for a trap off that, you can actually use time stop on your healer, and it will eat the trap for them, and then you can release the time stop by pressing the button again, and they won't get trapped on the intimidation stun. So there's some really fun things you can do with time stop, but it is super, super hard to use. Moving on, Swoop Up. This is basically rescue, but you're rescuing an enemy, which is really good in certain circumstances. You can actually pull people through walls with this, which is really annoying for them, because say, you know, they're on one side of the pillar, you're here, and then you target it to the other side of the pillar, you'll actually pull them to the other side of the pillar, which is really, really good. But like I said, it's a 1.5 minute cooldown, which in my opinion, it's a really long cooldown for something that's like very situational. It's super situational. Sorry, I have the hiccups today. But yeah, it's super situational, but it does have its benefits and definitely could be abused, in my opinion. Very strong. Unburdened Flight, this is really good versus warriors. This just makes you immune to slows while your hover is active. This is super strong versus warriors, in my opinion. Another really strong PvP talent versus melee is Crippling Force. This just makes it so that when you're channeling Disintegrate, it amplifies your Permeating Chill to do 80% slow. Now, this is the highest slow in the game, just naturally. Chains of Ice is really close to it with a 70% slow, but yeah, the Crippling Force slow is disgusting. It basically makes a warrior feel useless unless if they are blade storming. It's really strong versus Windwalker monks, in my opinion, painfully strong, because they can Tiger's Lust, but the second they get hit by a Disintegrate, they are back to being crippled into oblivion. So it's super strong versus Windwalker monks. It's also really good versus rogues, in my opinion. So yeah, test it out versus a bunch of things, but these two talents are pretty good, but it's really hard to take both of them at the same time, so you kind of have to determine which one's better, and 90% of the time I would say Unburdened Flight is more consistent and more better. It is just, I think it's just better in general than Crippling Force, but Crippling Force does have its uses. Divide and Conquer, this is really good if you're playing with a Death Knight and you can't get a healer in crowd control. A lot of the times you can grip both of the DPS and use Divide and Conquer to line of sight them from their healer, and then this forces their healer to walk into like your range, and then you can start counteracting, blah blah blah. It's pretty good. Divide and Conquer is really good. It's kind of like a smoke bomb, except the problem with Divide and Conquer is it forces your team your team to also be line of sight. So if I'm line of sighting my healer, Divide and Conquer will actually force them into position, into a bad position too. So you have to be very mindful of when you use deep breath with Divide and Conquer active, because you can accidentally cut off your healer and you can end up killing a teammate by accident because they are line of sight of your healer, etc. So yeah, Divide and Conquer could be a little sketchy, just like 7 other talents from Devastation Evoker. Dreamcatcher, I personally love using Dreamcatcher. I know a lot of people don't, but Sleepwalk not having a cooldown but its cast time is increased by 0.2 seconds. It's actually really good in my opinion. Now Sleepwalk without it is a 1.4 second cast, so with it it's a 1.6 second cast. Now that's me out of PvP, so it's really probably like a 1.5 second cast when you include a little bit extra haste. But either way, 1.5 second cast for a spammable Sleepwalk is really good in my opinion. It's basically like a fear. I guess you could say it's on the same DR as Fear. So if you're playing with something like a Windwalker Monk, which I've been playing with a bunch lately this season, it's really good because you can actually get a full Sleepwalk off of Paralysis, and then also you can swap your Sleepwalk to Peel for your Windwalker or Peel for yourself when you guys don't have your damage. So Dreamcatcher is really strong in my opinion, but it also depends on what composition you're playing. This is also almost a must pick if you're playing like Frostmage Devastation Evoker, because then you can poly one target and then you can Sleepwalk the other target, and basically you can do the exact same thing that Mage Warlock does, which is really good. You can just spread CC around and then focus down one target at a time, while Sleepwalk is on one target and Poly's on the other, and then you can swap Sleepwalk to the target that was polyed and then the poly to the person that was sleepwalked, which is really nice. Dreamwalker's Embrace, another really niche but really cool ability. This is really good versus classes like Demonology Warlocks, and also really good against Unholy Death Knights, classes with a lot of pets, because it actually procs the healing on you from those pets. So the way it works is you you Verdant Embrace a teammate, and it increases you and your teammate's movement speed by 40%. Anybody gets hit by the beam between you and your teammate is now slowed, and it does damage to them, about 35k in PvP per tick, which it ticks really fast. It ticks probably about every quarter of a second, I think, or every maybe half a second. But either way, it's a lot when you're considering the amount of people you can hit with this, and a little bit of that healing ends up getting transferred to you, which is really nice. And honestly, Dreamwalker's Embrace combined with Unburdened Flight makes you move like an absolute NASCAR every single time you hover. So like if you Verdant Embrace and then hover, you're actually just moving at 40% increased movement speed, and you can't be slowed, which is really, really good versus a lot of melee cleaves, especially because Dreamwalker's Embrace will be hitting those melee cleaves on you, most likely because you'll be out of the range of them, and it's a really good ability versus melee cleaves and a lot of pet classes, in my opinion. I do like running Dreamwalker's Embrace versus Ret Warrior. It is something that I enjoy doing. I personally would take Dreamwalker's Embrace, Unburdened Flight, and Null Shroud versus Ret Warrior, but some people take Obsidian Metal. I don't think it's necessary because you're going to be out of range of them a lot when you take Unburdened Flight. Moving on, Obsidian Metal, like I said, this is just when your Obsidian Scales is active. You are immune to interrupts, silence, and pushback effects, which is nice, but not needed versus some compositions. And then we have the mother of all PvP talents, Nullifying Shroud. This is a purgeable buff that is a 1.5-minute cooldown, but it prevents the next 3 full loss of control effects on you. So say you are say you're fighting against a rogue and you Nullifying Shroud after they open. This will prevent Kidney, Cheap Shot, Gouge, Blind. It prevents anything from you. But note, it can be spell stolen by a mage. So if you're running into a mage as a Devastation Evoker, I highly suggest not playing Nullifying Shroud, and I do highly suggest playing Scurrying Flame, and I also like playing Dreamcatcher versus mage. So there's certain, you can play around with these quite a bit, but it depends heavily on what you're fighting against, what PvP talents you're going to be playing. So a lot of the times you'll notice in the beginning and then the starting room of games, say you're watching my 0 to Legend series, depending on what I'm fighting against, I'm changing around my PvP talents almost every single round. So there's a lot of good PvP talents, but they do swap up quite a bit. But yeah, that's it for PvP talents. Let's get right into, I believe we're going to go over the burst rotation. Alrighty guys, so moving into our burst rotation for Devastation Evoker. Now this hasn't changed too much from what it was back in the last ultimate guide for my Devastation Evoker, but basically the idea is you can either Dragon Rage first depending on what you're fighting, or you can Deep Breath first to engage your burst rotation. Now if you plan to Deep Breath first, I highly suggest you Oppressing Roar before your Deep Breath, because if you don't, the Deep Breath stun will wear off before you're able to get off an Eternity Surge or a Fire Breath, because you have to cast Dragon Rage after, and Dragon Rage is on global cooldown. So if you do plan to do a Deep Breath go, you Oppressing Roar, you Deep Breath your target, and then you Dragon Rage, Shattering Star, Eternity Surge, Tip the Scales, Fire Breath, Disintegrate, Living Flame to get Essence Burst back, Disintegrate, disintegrate, and you just keep spamming out disintegrate. And you continue to do this basically until the end of your Dragon Rage. Now, the nice part about using Deep Breath first is that you can see we have 4 seconds left on our Dragon Rage. We actually can get off an Eternity Surge and another Fire Breath, extending our Dragon Rage even longer. Now, I will say towards the end of your Dragon Rage here, you're going to want to spam Azure Strike so that you can get your Essence Burst back before your Dragon Rage falls off, because it's not a 100% chance you get Essence Burst while you're outside of Dragon Rage. So the last 2 globals, I would say, of Dragon Rage, try to cap out your Essence Burst if you can, and that's the way I like to use my burst rotation, but that's only if you plan to use Deep Breath first. Now, like I said, that allows your Dragon Rage to last quite a long time, because you end up doing an extra 16 seconds of increased Dragon Rage from Animosity, because we get off 4 total Empower spells during 1 Dragon Rage, which is pretty insane, because that makes our Dragon Rage last 32 seconds straight then. And as you can see, based on this, in just a 32-second period of time, we were able to do almost 9 million damage, 8 million damage single target, and some to the cleave here, but pretty insane amount of damage consistently, and we were hitting some stupidly high numbers. Like you can see, this Fire Breath hit for 513k, and I had an Eternity Surge hit for 400k, and then I had my Disintegrates ticking for anywhere from 120 to 170k. So pretty disgusting damage here. Pretty insane, honestly. I would say the only other way I would do my damage, if I say didn't have a Pressing Roar up, is I would Dragon Rage, and then I would Azure Strike, Deep Breath into Shattering Star, Eternity Surge, Tip the Scales, Fire Breath, Disintegrate, and Disintegrate. And then when you get out of Disintegrates like this, you cast your Living Flame, like I said, and you just spam out these Disintegrates again. Now, I will explain one thing that a lot of people were confused about in my comments, and they were asking me why I press Disintegrate off global cooldown. So like every single time I have a Disintegrate, I'm just spamming it, like spam, instead of letting the Disintegrate tick down like this. So say the Disintegrate ticks down, and the reason why I spam it a lot of the time is during burst windows, what Disintegrate does. So Disintegrate ticks the second you hit somebody with it. So the millisecond I press Disintegrate, it does damage. So you see that 55k. So now, with that in mind, when you reapply a Disintegrate with a Disintegrate active, if you do that instant tick, the tick that it's going to get reactivated on, and then the instant tick again, you're doing 3 instances of Disintegrate in basically 1 second. So you can actually do stupendous amount of damage in a very short window if you're spamming your Disintegrates instead of if you're letting them channel out. Because if you're letting them channel out, there's a window between each period of time that your Disintegrate is ticking. It's like tick, tick, tick. Instead of every single time, it would be tick, 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 tick. Yeah, that's how your Disintegrates are ticking if you're spamming Disintegrate. So, for instance, watch, I get an Essence Burst here, spamming. You can see 2 ticks right there, 2 ticks right there. So in those 2 tick windows, instead of doing 55k in that global, I'm doing actually 110k non-crit, and that's without burst active completely, and basically the lowest amount of mastery I could possibly have. It's probably getting about maybe 3% benefit from it. So if I'm hitting like a full health target instead, for instance, my Disintegrates are actually going to tick even harder, which is pretty insane to think about, because you're doing, say, 100k Disintegrate ticks, and you're ticking twice in the same instance of damage. That means you're doing 200k non-crit. Now, if those crit, you're doing 400k in a single instance of Disintegrate damage, and you're doing that every single second, which is pretty freaking insanely high burst. Again, like I said, when you plan to burst here, you're going to a Pressing Roar, Deep Breath, Dragon Rage. You're going to want to use Shattering Star, Eternity Surge, Tip the Scales, Fire Breath, and like I said, I'm spamming Disintegrate to get as many Disintegrates off in single bits of time. And what that allows me to do is do these really high burst ticks like this. Boom, 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 boom. And they tick off super fast, and you end up doing ridiculous damage in small, small windows. So I highly suggest trying it out if you haven't. I know a lot of people critique me on it in videos. You'll see it all the way through my Zero to Legend series. Pretty much every single video, I'm just spamming disintegrate, and there is a good reason for it. So definitely check that out, because I know a lot of people just sit there and let their disintegrates channel out like this, but in my opinion it is not the best way to do damage outside of when you are not doing your burst. If you are just floating around doing damage, not bursting, and you're just trying to do damage, channeling out your disintegrates is more damage over time, because by like double tapping my disintegrate, I'm actually canceling the last 2 ticks of every disintegrate, but in a shorter window I'm doing more damage. So the only reason I spam disintegrate is when I'm bursting, but when I'm doing consistent damage outside of my burst, I will let my disintegrates channel out. So if I'm, say, just trying to do some damage while I'm waiting for cooldowns to come back up, I'm just going to sit here and let my disintegrates channel as much as possible, and that will allow you to do the most damage possible. I hope that helps explain that. If it doesn't, like I said, write a comment down below. I'll gladly explain it in a comment. It might be easier to explain written out. But either way, pretty insane damage from Devastation Evoker and super easy to pull off. But yeah, that's our burst rotation. Let's go over stat and gearing priority for Season 4. This is huge information, super important, guys. Alrighty, guys, so moving into gearing for the first week. So we're going to be moving into the second week of the season, so Season 4. But for the first week, this is exactly what I chose to do for gear. So I got full honor gear straight off the bat. I got as much mastery as possible. I did pick up the combatant's jeweled signet off the auction house as a verse mastery ring, so that I have 2 verse mastery rings, and the one off the auction house you can get, and it gives you a socket for free as well, which is really nice. So even though it's only 502 item level, it is better to have this for verse mastery, and so you have both as verse mastery for your rings, because our main stat is definitely mastery in PvP. Mastery is super important. I know a lot of PvE people that are playing Devastation Evoker don't play mastery, and I'll explain it to you why. Because in PvE, people aren't getting healed to full health all the time, so your mastery isn't proccing as much. And when mobs are at, say, 20% health, your mastery is very low value compared to critical strike or haste. But in PvP, where people are getting healed to full health all the time, mastery is super, super important for us, as well as versatility. So yes, you get full mastery gear. I do go full mastery verse gems. Now right now in the beginning of the season, because verse is so high from honor gear, you can probably just go straight mastery gems, even including the one on the ring. I do get Sophic Devotion. I did pick up 2-piece. Now this is pretty much just free 2-piece. The 2-piece sucks. It only does about 2% of our damage in PvP, but you get verse mastery on your helmet, and it's the highest mastery you can get, as well as haste mastery, and it's the highest mastery you can get out of a chest piece and a helmet right now. So definitely worth getting 2-piece, at least just for the helmet and the chest. And the rest of our pieces, we're going to end up crafting shoulders for verse mastery, but for right now they're just the honor shoulders, this verse haste, verse mastery, pretty much verse mastery every single place I can get it possible. And you'll see in PvP I have about 72% mastery in PvP, which is absolutely insane, as well as 37% versatility. Like I said, I get Sophic, I do get mastery enchants, I go regenerative leech, which gives us 6% leech while in PvP, which is like an extra 1% compared to our 5% passive, so an extra 1% leech. And then I get speed enchants on our wrists and our boots, and then I get the leg enchant for the legs. Waking stats, super important. The leg enchant, by the way, off the auction house, I believe it's called like spell thread or something like that. So just look up under legs, under item enchants, legs, you'll see like spell thread. It is the one that gives you intellect and stamina. But that's basically all you need to know for gearing. It's heavy verse mastery. The only thing that makes our set bonus this season worth is the fact that the pieces are really good. The actual set is terrible. It does, like I said, 2% of our damage. I mean, let's take a peek here. If I go back to this Ashmane's Fall, ridiculously long game, and it did 2.6% of my damage over the course of an almost 8-minute long game. So that is something to consider when you're thinking about tier set. You might be able to craft verse mastery chest and verse mastery helmet, but the tier piece is verse mastery, so it's almost like you might as well get the tier piece helmet. So I would suggest getting at least the tier piece helmet for free with your 1600 achievement, and then getting the chest from your conquest. So you'll see I have 475 conquest right now because I spent conquest on the chest. And then next next week we'll probably be trying to get either the main hand weapon, because I bought the offhand weapon with the war mode PvP, the Sparks gear. So this is for Trophy of Strife. I got the offhand. I will end up replacing this most likely with a Verse Mastery weapon eventually, a full Verse Mastery weapon, because right now it's Verse Haste. But just because it's early in the season, I want to get as much item level as possible, so I went and got this with my Trophies of Strife. Now next week I'm going to be replacing my off pieces with Trophy of Strife gear, probably my cloak, if not my shoulders. I'm going to try to get Verse Mastery shoulders this week somehow, because it's the only piece of gear I don't have Verse Mastery on besides my offhand weapon. So that is basically gearing for Devastation Evoker in Season 4 for at least the first couple of weeks, but majority of the time you're just going to go heavy into Verse Mastery the whole season. Try to just crank out as much mastery as possible, and I hope that helped you. Now let's get right into macros. Alrighty, so to go over our macros for Season 4 for Devastation Evoker, some really simple macros that will help you a substantial amount. So I do have a Deep Breath macro if you are running the On-Use Trinket, which is the trinket where you activate it to gain primary stat. You just put that in your macro before your Deep Breath. You need to make sure it's on, like /use the trinket and then /cast deep breath. This way, before you even cast the deep breath, you get the trinket active. If you use deep breath first, the trinket will never activate unless if you're spamming deep breath for some reason, which makes no sense because it's basically a one-use ability. Moving on to our next important macro, I do have a Shattering Star macro. Now basically what this does is it allows me to cast Shattering Star, but it also pings that I'm going to be attacking that target. Now you can just macro that by typing /ping space attack at target attack, and basically what that does is if I have a target and I want to be hitting it, I can be pressing my Shattering Star macro, and that pings that's the target that I'm hitting, which is really important because one, I'm only going to be doing that every about 20 seconds, so I won't be spamming the shit out of my teammates. But it also tells you that like this is the target that I'm going to be hitting because it's my Shattering Star target. And so in stuff like solo shuffle where you don't have comms, this is really nice to help navigate your team around who you're hitting. Super solid macro for that. Our next macro is I just have a simple /cast at cursor Landslide macro, and this basically lets me use my Landslide on the ground, and it lets me root people, and it goes out to where my cursor is. So if I'm targeting where, like, say a healer is, my Landslide will reach out to the healer-ish areas. Now, some people do the same thing with their Deep Breath. I personally don't, but you can also do a /cast at cursor macro for your Deep Breath. And then I do have cast rescue macros for my party 1 and 2. That way I can just instantly rescue my party 1 and 2 when I need to. Super simple macros, just some simple /cast at their name space rescue, and then I have a Curse Dispel macro for my healers. Now the reason why I have a Curse Dispel macro for my healer, I have two like Curse Dispels on my, I say Curse Dispel, but it's actually Cauterizing Flame. So, but I have two on my bar. One is just a free use Cauterizing Flame. I could use it on myself. I could use it on a target that I just target, and then I also have this Curse Dispel macro, which is just /cast at whatever my healer's name is, space Cauterizing Flame. And so if they get hexed, I can just press that keybind, and I know for sure that I'm going to instantly get them out of the hex, which is really nice, super solid. I do have a fake casting or a stop casting macro built into my buff, so that if I want to fake kicks and I'm pressing Disintegrate, I just simply press my buff. And I actually fake a lot of kicks this way. Same casting as Sleepwalk. I could fake it with my my buff. So just super simple, just stop casting macro. I highly suggest having this because we cast a lot while moving, and a lot of the times people will see us moving and say, oh, that's a really easy target to just kick, because in that case you're moving. A lot of the times you can't just move to the side like this and stop cast your own cast by moving, which a lot of people do to stop cast. It's important to have a stop casting macro so that when you are moving you can stop your cast, if that makes sense. I do have focus macros for my Sleepwalk. and my quell, super important in PvP. You want to make sure that you have like a healer on your focus, or you know, an off DPS on your focus and your main target you're attacking, and say this healer starts to cast Cyclone, I can then focus quell the Cyclone cast. Super nice, super important. I do have a Scales macro. Now this one is relatively important because I used to mess this up a lot back when I first started playing, but basically, or playing Evoker, but basically it's a slash cast sequence space reset equals 10 Obsidian Scales, comma 5. And what this does is it makes it so that you can't possibly accidentally stack 2 Obsidian Scales by spamming the button. I used to do this a lot. And I used to accidentally press Obsidian Scales and not realize I had it up and press it again, and I would waste both of my charges of Obsidian Scales within like 3 seconds. So this prevents me from doing that, because basically what it does is it makes it so that I can cast Obsidian Scales, but for the next like 10 seconds I can't cast another Obsidian Scales. So I can't possibly overlap the Obsidian Scales. But the problem with this macro is if I keep spamming it by accident before the 10-second reset, it restarts that 10-second timer. So if I press Obsidian Scales and then I go to 9 seconds and I press it again, and then I go to 8 seconds and then I press it again, I will never be able to use my other Obsidian Scales. So I have to make sure that I time out my Obsidian Scales. It just, overall, it helps. But, you know, it's something to consider. I will have these macros in the description below, so don't feel like, oh my god, what is he saying? Slash cast sequence, slash sequence cast reset. What the heck is he saying? It's all going to be in the description below. Just, yeah, super simple stuff. And then Verdant Embrace, I have a macro. I have one Verdant Embrace that is just a free use one, just like my Curse Dispel. And then I have a macro to Verdant Embrace my teammate. And the reason why I have a Verdant Embrace macro like that is I found that I got significantly more value out of Dreamwalker's Embrace when I had a keybind where I could just press it and it auto targets my teammate and Verdant Embraces them, instead of me having to manually click my teammate and Verdant Embrace them. So yeah, I just have it macroed to my off DPS. So say I'm playing with a Windwalker Monk, I'll have my Windwalker Monk's name in there, and then I'll Verdant Embrace to them over and over again if I have Dreamwalker's Embrace. If I don't take Dreamwalker's Embrace, 90% of the times I'm just using Verdant Embrace as either a heal or a way to move myself around the map faster, because say I run out of hovers and then the melee get back onto me, I can Verdant Embrace to a teammate because it's basically the same distance a hover would move you. So super important to get value out of your Verdant Embrace any way you can. But yeah, this is basically all the macros I have for Devastation Evoker. Nothing too crazy, nothing too out of the box, but definitely some important stuff in there, specifically the focus cast macros, as well as I really like my cursor landslide macro. That helps a bunch. And also this Verdant Embrace macro is super important as well, because if you are running the Dreamwalker's Embrace PvP talent, it will increase the uptime of that talent by a substantial amount. And yeah, if you guys have any questions about any macros, or you have any ideas for a macro you would like to be made and you don't know how to make it, shoot it down in the comments below and I'll gladly try to figure it out for you so that it can be worked out. But yeah, that's macro. Alrighty guys, so now that we got everything situated, here's going to be some gameplay clips from like 2.5 to 2.6k MMR shuffles last season, as well as some early season, this season games where I'm playing at like 2.1, 2.2 MMR. I hope you guys enjoy it. If you did, please make sure to drop a like and a sub. It means the world to me. Again, if you have any questions at all, leave them in the comments below. I'll get back to you soon. And also be sure to be on the lookout. I am coming out with another video this week that will most likely be a VOD review of some of my gameplay, and then I plan on coming out with another gameplay video, just raw gameplay. I hope you guys enjoy that too, and I'll see you next time. Peace. Thank you for listening to the fucking pings. I'll be killed here all fucking day. Good shit. Good shit. I want to get this no shot off. So fucking solid. Fake this kick. Kick him. Good job, good job. Queuing for a while then.
My goal is to get 2100.
Reading that.
Sweeping.
Nice. It's already icebound. I land. No, I don't.
I'm gonna disarm Icebound.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yo, kill thing. Yeah. DK. DK dies. Right here.
Yeah.
Haunted P. Knock him out of this. Okay, he doesn't move. I forgot that his class is dumb. Monk doesn't have karma either, by the way. They're just pressing every defensive button in the entire game, apparently. I got you. I got you. I got you. Apparently, he doesn't have a fucking curse dispel as a shaman. Big damage on DK here.
Yeah.
Oh, well, still big down. I have to shrink this one. I guess I didn't have to, actually. I just fucking threw. Should be able to get a sleep off. JK got kicked. I'm just lining the DK all game.
I'm pretty tied.
Okay. I'm gonna land my deep breath on both the shaman and him.
Yeah.
I got a full fuck. I got a full sleep here. Bait down on DK. He's getting fucking cranked. Okay.
I disarm his go. I disarm his go.
Trying to kill the link out of this. Just permanent fucking CC'd. Pulling myself out. I get grip back in. That's cool. Cool ability. No shot soon. No shot here. Kind of cranking this monk for a sec.
Yeah, hit him. Actually, yeah, kill monk.
Yeah, monk can die. Oh fuck. So close actually.
Just hit DK now.
Yep. Just
Hit wherever you can.
He just wants goes on our fucking healer. I can see it. I have a full go in 5 seconds. Beautiful. Oh, I actually cranked this fucking guy out of this.
I'm hitting Windwalker. I'm hitting the DK.
Yeah.
Nice. Yo, Cuds, that's crazy how hard you got gapped there. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah, Cuds got fucking heavy gapped. Alright.
Dispel me.
Never happened.
So I can play my class.
Huh? How does that not hit the shaman? Am I fucking zonkered? What the fuck just happened there? I'm on the warrior. Super hard.
Same.
Let's see this. Yeah, this warrior's getting fucked. He's not having a fun game whatsoever. Back on the shaman. Yep.
Yeah.
There's lasso. Nice, thank you.
Cap healer here.
Beautiful. Oh fuck, I just whipped my kick so hard. Full sleep here. It's gonna get tremor, right? Apparently not.
I disarm the go.
Okay. Pins up.
Double sweep.
Yeah.
One more.
Yeah, that's fine. Those are really good.
Oh.
Dust it. They're all kind of dying.
Yeah. You cap healer here.
Warrior doesn't die by the sword. I'm pulling him mad far. Okay, good. Fake kick there.
Cap healer.
Nice, huge. I got a full sleep off here. That's a little unlucky.
Creep.
Huge. Okay, I stunned the healer.
Yep.
The shaman can die here. Swap, swap, swap. Huge.
Dark Arc.
Shit,
Fear here?
Shit.
You're really far.
Yeah,
You're really
yeah,
far.
yeah. I have full sleep on the healer. Big damage on the shaman here.
Nice.
Shaman dies, shaman dies.
Yeah.
Fuck. Kick. Oh, I couldn't kick it. Still pretty beat down.
Creep.
Nice, huge. I don't really have anything for like 10 seconds. I'm just gonna run for right now. I'm gonna go for this on the healer here. I actually hit him. I had a full sleep off it. Kill. Nice.
Good night.
My goodness. That's versus Reedy too. Reedy's insane.